Welcome back to Not Dying as Belgium. In the previous part we died as Belgium again in the Road to 56 mod. However, now my understanding of the game is greater than ever before, and in particular, the main thing holding me back in my third attempt was a lack of manpower. So now, we're playing as Communist Belgium. The Communists are able to increase their manpower quite a lot by taking war measures during peacetime. So this means we can have, in theory, a bigger army before the war starts. The issue actually became production, because now we have plenty of people to recruit. We just can't give them guns, and they won't be trained until they have all of their stuff. So we need to start working on our economy. You can see I went up to something like 5 or 6 regiments or divisions being recruited at the same time because our manpower was increasing so rapidly. But we need to get more military factories out there. We're not even producing all the stuff our divisions need right now. I mentioned last time that in this mod, Belgium has severe problems making buildings because you have a very weak civilian economy due to a variety of debuffs that have to gradually be gotten rid of using focuses and techs. But eventually we get to the point when we can start spamming out new factories relatively quickly, and also there are some techs that increase the number of factories you can put in the same place, and because we only have 2 places here to build things, then we certainly need that. So we get things going, and you can see our manpower now is about as high as it was when we started the campaign, so we've got plenty of people. Also, because the Communists allow you to build war support outside of war pretty quickly, we can start mobilizing the economy and just acting as if we're at war before anything starts, which will mean that when it actually does start, our army will be much more ready to go. We'll have all of our guns and divisions ready. That's the plan anyway. We also, though, want to think about fortifying again, since we're going to be a primarily defensive nation right here. I had considered shortening my line. You can see the crossed out line there is where I was thinking of defending. I decided to add this extra corner. That was a kind of arbitrary decision, just thinking maybe I'll take advantage of the river a bit more. It proves to be crucial, as we'll see later on. I was also considering here extending the line to cover the bit that I just haven't bothered defending so far in any of my attempts, and we'll come back to that. So far we're just fortifying the usual places, but a slightly shorter version of the previous line so that we'll have effectively more troops defending per meter. We've also now got our war economy really booming. We're fully recruiting those 6 divisions at the same time. Our army's starting to get big as we approach the end of 1939 and the action starts. I think Germany might have already invaded Luxembourg or something, so there is trouble brewing on our borders right there. In fact, here is the capitulation. And I decided I actually am going to extend the line. I felt confident because we have so many troops. I thought we can probably try and defend the gap into France, because previously France always failed to defend that little 2-region gap with the river, because I guess they're focusing on the Maginot Line where they were much more successful. So we're going to try and do it for them in this case, because we have some spare troops. Our first army is going to defend primarily where the enemy are likely to attack us initially, so this little line I'm setting up right here. Then the second army, which will be gradually reinforced with all of the new things coming out of training, will defend at first the less important secondary line, which is designed to react to the Netherlands probably falling. We certainly need that set up relatively quickly. I'm also fortifying our back lines in case we do get rear attacked again, and we're going to try and really quickly fortify the new Ardennes forest positions that I want to defend. We won't be able to get much of a defensive advantage there, but our troops can entrench, which gives you plus 50% to your stats if we just leave them sitting there for a while, so we'll still have some advantage. In March 1940, we can see there's some action going on. I thought maybe I'd somehow got out of the war with my political shenanigans. Maybe Germany didn't want to attack me because they were invading France and the Netherlands to either side of me, but then they did add me into the war as well, so they're going to come over here. We get the chance to join the Allies, and I thought, well, fine. We also, though, get the chance to join the Comintern, the Soviet faction. What I don't know is whether you can be in that at the same time. The thing is, being more aligned with the Soviets doesn't necessarily help us, because the big allied powers are literally right next to us, so we want them to join us really to fight on our territory. I ended up accepting both, so I don't know if I'm in both, nothing seems to happen. But yes, here we go. The Germans immediately start attacking that little corner of the bit I previously hadn't bothered defending. And it looks like we're going to hold out. We've got lots of divisions stalled because we still don't have enough equipment to deploy stuff. I did do lots of lend-lease. I was offered a lot of lend-lease from other powers to get more support equipment, which helped out. And here, taking a look at the numbers, the shield stats on the right are bigger than the sword stats on the left. So I think that means something good is happening. We are defending successfully. We're not going to take very many losses, but we still lose organization because we're fighting. So we can still lose the fight if the enemy have enough organization across a lot of divisions that they can keep throwing them at us until we just get bored of killing them. But for now, we are holding that front line, and more units pour in and start attacking across the front line. Where they're attacking the parts with a river is going to be extra easy to hold. Obviously, this also gives a chance for France to join the fight, because the units that were going to defend this gap will join our defences as well, so that will further solidify things. Obviously, we're going to have issues once the Netherlands disappears, which is going to be pretty much instant, so we need to get that second army ready for action. I also, by the way, do not have an air force this time. I focused entirely on land unit production, meaning we're not contesting air superiority. That will give us a disadvantage in our combats, but we also have the AA guns, which will lessen that disadvantage, whatever it happens to be. So here we are a bit later, where the enemy have taken out the Netherlands, but you can see, just like in our previous attempt, they've kind of set up along our defensive line, but they're not attacking it. So we've stalled them. The AI doesn't think it can win the fights, so it's just going to sit back. And that's to our advantage, because we've still got much more we can do. We can keep deploying more troops right in front of the enemy. During the delay, I decided to check the stats. We've lost 10,000 people so far, but it looks like we've killed about 90,000 Germans, and they've lost way more than that to the other powers as well. So that's looking pretty good. We're trading extremely efficiently. That's what we need, because our total population is much smaller than theirs, obviously, so it's not necessarily efficient enough, I don't know. But it looks good, and you can see the war has just stopped for all intents and purposes. They can't get past us, and they're not willing to try. We're creating a World War I style situation, really. There is still a push happening, though. The Italians are very slowly defeating the French in the south, but in the north, nothing at all is happening, and during this time, I've reinforced my positions from the Belgian Congo as well, so we have some more troops here. We are actually being bombed. The game doesn't make a very big point of this. It's kind of hard to tell that you're being aerial attacked, but the way I could tell is that our buildings keep getting destroyed and I have to repair them all the time. So something is bombing us. That's just about all the damage the enemy can do to us. We're able to repair faster than they can destroy in this case, so no long-term damage is happening, and as more time passes, we are spitting out more and more weapons, more and more divisions, and gradually I'm going to start working on planes as well. Here you can see, actually a while later, in February of 1941, we've got something of an air force together, and I'm starting to contest the air to stop that bombing from happening. But overall, very little action, all quiet on the Western Front indeed. Looks like they're trying to make a few skirmishing attacks here and there, but very little has been achieved, and there's been such a long delay that the British and French armies have fully deployed along my line as well. So we're extra powerful. It's going to be extra hard for the enemy to get through this. This is going much better than the other 3 attempts, suffice to say. With not much going on up north, I was checking out the southern front, and here I'm even sending my reserve army, now with some marine divisions added to it, to go and try to help out. This is when I discovered that you can use the front lines button and drag it so that it doesn't select an entire front line. Like, the issue here would be if I told my guys to just go to the front line, they would go to like any position from the northern end to the southern end of the gigantic line going across France. So I discovered I could make them go and stand there without it technically being a fallback order, which is what I'm using for my troops currently on my front line. Anyway, that discovery aside, we continue to stand here and defend against the enemy. I'm going to try and use my new frontline tool to in some way improve things. I had this idea in my head that if I set them up to be defending using the frontline tool, then I can do this thing where it says execute the plan being to do nothing. but that you'd get some kind of planning bonus and that your defensive power would increase. Whether that's true or not, I have no idea. I suspect not. Here's a look at the air war, where I finally got to a point when I had over 300 fighters to contest the air, but the enemy have over 4,000 planes operating in the area, so it was difficult for us. The Allies didn't help out at all in this regard, it was just us fighting for the air. We are actually trading okay. The enemy are losing tons of planes to anti-aircraft fire and to the odd interception by our fighters, but we're losing them at a similar rate, and it's going to be harder for us to manufacture those planes again. So, not too good in the long run, but it's probably saving a few of our troops' lives. Now, I did notice the enemy were attacking the top corner of my territory quite intensely, with unit after unit for a long time, and I started actually deploying more and more stuff there to reinforce the area, because I thought we may eventually lose this fight, and there we see the green turn to red as the enemy's power is starting to get a little bit too much for us to handle, I guess. Although that red then did go back to being green again, so my trust in the colour and the number combination meaning something is waning, and you can see an example here of what I thought I saw happening the first time I played. Then I thought surely that wasn't happening, I must have been mistaken, but no, it is happening. This being that you can lose a winning battle, and you see it happening here. We have all of these undeployed units who could potentially defend this location, but the way it seems to work is that if everything that's currently fighting gets defeated, everything that hadn't joined the fight also leaves, and the way it determines whether something is fighting is by some kind of RNG process. So while we actually had a gigantic reserve that was stationed in that corner to defend it, they don't fight, they retreat when the depleted frontline units retreat as well. And this means we end up losing that corner of our territory. Not necessarily a big deal, because it does shorten our line and make things a bit easier for us. But actually, if you check some of the numbers, we're in trouble here. We actually lost about half of our factories and the majority of our recruitable population, because that little corner was really important, as it turns out, and that's why I mentioned earlier that it was lucky that I somewhat arbitrarily decided to defend it in the first place. I was thinking of going for the shorter line and just leaving it be from the get-go. Our guys seem to be automatically trying to get back in there. I think I had given them some move orders to go reinforce that position, and they're sort of still carrying them out, even though the enemy are there now. So we're attacking, but our attacks are very ineffective. Our divisions are set up to have low attack stats, plus the enemy are now using my fortifications against me. So while some attacks went off, I eventually managed to persuade our guys to stop, and then we just leave it at that. But yes, with the loss of factories, it really makes a big difference. We have to massively cut back on production. Virtually all of our fighter production is gone, all of my tank production is gone, and like 90% of my civilian construction is gone. That means we can't fortify and repair very well anymore. And we have not very much manpower. We lost tons, so even if I could produce a lot of weapons, we can't expand our army much more. Essentially, there was a massive city in that tile, and a lot of our stuff was there. What we need really is some in-game representation of where in an area something is actually being built, because you just build it like in the province, one of the two provinces we have. But it turns out everything was built on the front line, so that was very dangerous. We should have had more stuff there, or I should have known there's this RNG reinforcement mechanic that means no matter how high you stack a region with troops, they won't necessarily fight there. So having some weak troops in there who then retreat can cause everything else to retreat, which is an issue especially with things like the French divisions, which are lower in quality and more likely to retreat, being mixed into our defences here. You can apparently recruit signal divisions or signal companies into your armies, which makes them more likely to help each other in combat and more likely to go out of reserves and onto the front line as something else leaves. I figured that was just an automatic guaranteed process, but it totally isn't, and we've been screwed over by that in this case. We learn more and more with every Try Not to Die as Belgium campaign, it seems. And yet there's always still more to learn. Here's me attempting to work out how I might be able to counterattack, because we don't really need all of our divisions on the front line. I thought I can certainly expend some of them if it means taking back our crucial corner territory and indeed the territory next to it, so it's easier to defend. So now I have to think back to the tutorial so many hours ago where it did explain how to make an offensive move. So first we have to define a front line, then we have to define an offensive line. In my memory, this is all you had to do, and then you pressed go, and everything on the front line would try to move up to that new line defined by the spiky line over there. But you can see it says no divisions on it. I think what you're supposed to do is assign particular units to be part of the offensive, and then they'll try and push to that line. So I left my troops just sitting there. I thought they were preparing an offensive because there's some kind of preparation stage where your units gradually plan what to do. I don't think they're actually doing it in this case. Well, I tried, just not very hard. You can see we're also being attacked up north, but the enemy's attacks are failing. We're just inflicting many casualties on the enemy as they come in. Decided to check how the war's going overall. Looks like the enemy are losing more stuff than we are. In particular, we as Belgium have lost over 50,000 troops, but you'll see that Germany has lost something like 700,000 troops trying to invade Belgium, which accounts for about half of Germany's total losses in the war. They're getting annihilated by us specifically. It's kind of hard to tell from this top-down view where stuff just sort of happens and then stops happening. You can't really tell what's happened. But yeah, we're absolutely annihilating Germany in this war. We have been pushed back a bit, but they've lost so much stuff to gain that tiny bit of ground that now they're in trouble. You can see though that France is in trouble as well, because Italy has successfully invaded France from the south, and the bottom third of France is already gone. So I was worried that a rear attack might be coming in at about this point. However, things are better than they look, because it just so happens that the USA has entered the war. And because nothing's really going on in Asia right now, the Empire of Japan never really came to be. The USA just sends all of its troops to Europe. We get an early D-Day, but it's D-Day on easy mode because they don't have to force any landings. They can land in all manner of ports and just come straight into the front line. So a massive army is about to arrive on our front lines, and that's going to make things easier for us. You can see I'm still considering this offensive plan. I've got all the arrows and lines set up. I'm just puzzling over why nothing is happening, thinking maybe I just have to wait for it to pop up and say like you're done planning the offensive. Eventually my allies started making an offensive. Looks like it's not going very well, but I thought, well, I'll join in because you can bypass the entire planned offensive thing in a more traditional RTS way. You just select the units and select which bit you want them to attack, and they'll arrange it. It might be better if we could get something like that for the offensive plan as well, because there are so many lines all over the screen right now. It's so confusing to try and work out what's going on. And there was a tutorial for it, but I guess I needed some more or something because I didn't get it in the end. Anyway, obviously I'm too dumb for this, and in this case our troops suck too hard to actually make the attacks I'm telling them to do. I did check out the numbers here, and when we're on the offensive our stats are really low, plus the enemy are entrenched, so we end up kind of with the reverse of what the war's been so far, where they have a similar advantage to what we have against them. As a result, I gave up on the attack. I did actually try and make the attack a couple more times as I gradually got to grips with the offensive planning system, but I gave up pretty much every time I started it, so I just won't talk about it anymore. We didn't really attack them. What did happen was we started to run out of supplies, because as the US deployed troops along the front line, it went over the edge, plus all of our infrastructure's been bombed, which reduces your sort of invisible supply lines. So it just tells me that we're running out of supplies. I didn't really know what to do about this, because it's not immediately obvious where your supplies are coming from, or whether you could buy supplies off someone else or something, but my eventual solution was to actually take quite a lot of our units off the front line. I thought, well, I can't convince the AI to go away. They'll probably make us all starve to death if we just stand here, so I have to leave. Therefore, I ended up forming a new army and pulling it down south. You can see the situation in the south did improve over time, and that's just because the USA spammed so many troops onto the front line that the Italians were pushed back, and we ended up pushing them back to this nice river line where the two sides are now staring at each other. So I'm going to add my troops onto the river line just to make it really hard for the enemy to cross. Our special defensive divisions will secure this position, so we're probably safe there for now. I'm not going to help out with the offensives, and there were some offensives going on. Every now and again the French and Americans would spam across the river and die en masse, but eventually they did actually take a little bit of territory on the other side, and from there the enemy will no longer get all of the buffs, or we'll no longer get the debuffs for attacking across the river, and that's going to make things easier. Now we'll just go with sheer numbers, and you can see I'm attempting to get our troops to follow behind the front line. What I need to do is use the front line tool. I think if you assign a front line and then click execute plan with no offensive selected, your guys kind of follow behind your allies and just sit there, which is what I want them to do. I just want to fight defensively and make sure any gains are kept. Maybe that's what they did. Here's me researching Signal Company after looking it up online and finding out what that does and why we needed it. And yes, you can see we did push the enemy back and kind of take back France, but then after that our offensives just stalled and we started dying en masse all over the place, so we couldn't push any further into Italy. But looking further afield, things are actually going okay, because what appears to be going on is the United Kingdom is invading Italy, doing what the Americans did in real life, I guess, and the USA are probably helping. And it seems to be working. Italy are gradually losing ground on another front, so we're kind of distracting them up top while they gradually actually lose down the bottom. And that's all we need. That's enough to take them out. As long as one of the offensive directions works, they'll eventually lose all their territory. Back at home, I'm still trying to take troops off the front line because the supply thing still isn't happening. However, something important is happening. It looks like the Allies are getting started with an invasion of the Netherlands, but from the north. They've landed a whole bunch of stuff up there. Presumably that place was less defended, not being the front line, so they found some early success, and now they can land more. So some kind of D-Day-like activity did end up happening, and that's going to help us out, because this pressure up here causes the Germans to redeploy some of the units that were on our front line to go over there. And seeing this, I thought maybe now we actually can make some progress. Our troops might suck on the offensive, but we've just got loads of them now in comparison to the enemy, so let's go for it. At first it appears to be going well. I think it gets worse and worse over time, but the fact that I ordered an offensive appears to tempt the rest of the allies into making an offensive as well, because all the other units around here start to advance at about the same time, right down the line, and many of the advances look like they're going to work, so the fact that Germany's been weakened by this D-Day invasion is probably helping us out. They have also been weakened quite substantially by something else that was going on that I actually didn't really notice when I was playing. I did the classic thing where I focus the camera on one area so much that I don't really look to what's happening to my left and right or anything like that, as we'll see in a second. We've retaken that all-important corner, so now I've got like 200,000 extra troops to recruit, and all of our factories are back so we can spam planes and tanks. I am gradually building up an offensive force of tanks, but it's kind of getting to the point of being too late. I'm not going to need it, because the rest of the allies are just running all over the place. Look at how many icons and lines are on the screen. It's rapidly getting out of control, but between all of this mess, it appears that something good's happening. And then this happened. This is what I was getting at earlier. The Soviets invaded Germany at some point, and I just didn't notice. And boom, the first time I notice anything's happening is when we get a message saying they've captured Berlin. So that's probably why we're actually able to make this offensive in the west. Germany is getting owned on the other side. Now I'm trying to kind of help with the offensive here, but again, with stuff just being all over the place, I don't really know what's going on. At least I don't need to know what's going on, because we have the faithful allies here, and the AI is managing to work out how to advance. There's an attack coming up through Italy. The Soviets are keeping Germany busy in the east, and in the west we're gradually taking the odd bit of territory here and there as the allies in general just walk in every different direction at the same time, and more icons seem to appear on the map every time we look. Here's us finishing off the pockets of resistance in the Netherlands-Belgium area. So with that, we have restored how things were at the start of the war by the looks of things. We're getting back to normal. Belgium is on the up. we appear to have done it. We have not died as Belgium. Now we just have to not lose the war. Looks like we're going to win this one by how it's going though. Germany's definitely on the back foot. You can see the Allies conquer all of Italy and then start coming up into Germany from the bottom. Germany's just being attacked from all sides at the same time. That's going to be difficult. And actually some of the troops we had in France are now helping push the front line down there in southern Germany. So we are there, we're making our contribution. Now we just have to wait for something good to happen. I wasn't really ordering offensives very much or anything like that because I figured the Allies would get on with it. But towards the end I did decide to actually contribute a little bit and start pressing the execute plan button, which I think causes our troops to be more interested in attacking on the front line. I don't know if you execute a plan on a front line with no offensive plan, they'll try and push it if they can, like if there's nothing in front of you, they'll move the front line up automatically. Anyway, I pressed some buttons, lots of battles are happening all over the place, the number of icons and lines and stuff on the screen is really destroying my PC at this stage for some reason. It's surprisingly difficult to render, but suddenly the war ends and we're at the peace treaty of Vienna. Now I have only a few stars, which I guess represents how much clout I have to influence what the peace treaty will be. One thing I can do is force whatever's left of Germany to go communist. That's actually pretty easy for me to do apparently, so we might as well throw that into the mix. So now they have to be communist. And then we run out of points, but we have the option to gain more points by passing the round. I think what's going on here is it's like we're kind of hanging back from the deliberations. The other countries are making their claims and stealing bits of Germany, but the longer we wait before we come back in to claim something else, the more we can claim. So it's like we charge up clout, and eventually we can charge up enough clout to come in and start actually taking some territory for ourselves. We can open up the list of available territories and see how much they cost in clout points, and click on them and start getting them. I was doing this arbitrarily because I had no idea what was going on. I was like, if I keep clicking pass, am I going to get kicked out or something, or is someone else just going to claim all of the territory? As far as I could tell though, that doesn't appear to be the case. I don't really understand what's going on as usual, but I ended up spamming that button just so many times and building up hundreds and thousands of clout points and then claiming quite a large area of Germany, as you can see here. I eventually stopped because, well, I didn't really know what I was doing. I was like, if I claim this, will everybody hate me or something? I thought there must be some downside to me making the claims, otherwise you could just make all the claims and I shouldn't have to sit here spamming a button to do it. Well, I don't really know. I think I could have kept claiming and taken more up to the border with the stuff in the east, where there's East Germany set up by the Soviets. So in the end, we've got an absolute mess of a situation. West Germany exists, but it's in the south on the Austrian border. There's a state called the Socialist Soviet Republic of Germany or something. So that's the government that I forced to go communist left over from Germany. They control like the black weirdly shaped area in the middle. Then there's East Germany set up by the Soviets controlling the whitish area. Overall, that's almost definitely going to cause a war, isn't it? This looks like it's a much more complicated setup than the real Cold War causing one. So obviously Europe is not secure after this peace treaty. There's almost certainly going to be some real mess between the Allies and the Comintern, who are now very powerful here. But we're getting out of here. We're going to be home by Christmas. It's currently 7 in the evening on Christmas Eve. So if they drive real fast, we can be home in time for Christmas. We did it, boys. The war is won, and Belgium did not die. In fact, it's stronger than ever, and now it has some weird extra territories as well. There's tons of people in there, and because they're going to go in through our mass recruitment system where we can still conscript them, we could probably make an absolutely massive army and cause some trouble, I suspect. But in this case, I just quit and said, well, I win. I did what I was trying to do. At this stage, I think doing anything else will be far too confusing. Don't ask me to go and attack somebody because I still don't understand it. There is, by the way, a war that is still going on because we're at war with Romania. And Romania's in trouble here. They're at war with like the entire world. It says at the top that the war's in stalemate or something, but we have about 18 million troops against their roughly 500,000. So I expect they're going to lose that war, and then World War II will officially be over. What I wanted to see is what our final stats were. Unfortunately, now that we're not at war with Germany, we can't see what the final numbers were. So I went back to the most recent time in the footage where I could see myself checking what the numbers are, so we'll look at those. So now we're back just before Germany got taken out. In the end, we lost something like 110,000 troops in our various efforts. Not too bad considering we were at the front line for many years. Germany lost about 900,000 or 800 to 900,000 troops fighting us. So we traded very well. But our honoured position as being the killer of half of the German army or something has unfortunately been taken by the Soviets, who killed more than half with their offensive that I didn't notice. They should have sent me a letter or something. Some big action was happening somewhere else, and I completely missed it, so we didn't really participate in most of the war as it turns out, but it really felt like we did. We'll find some propaganda to claim that Stalin was using our strategies or something. He stole all of my ideas. We invented conscripting everyone and throwing them into battle. This is the true way of Marxist Devinism, the new philosophy of communist Belgium and now communist bits of Germany that's left over or something. It says there the Soviet Socialist Republic, but I don't think we're affiliated with the Soviets, because in the focus tree you had to choose whether you'd be an independent communist nation or a Soviet affiliated one. Something, something, something. It doesn't matter. We win. We've almost invented nukes. We're going to cause some trouble in the future, so it's going to suddenly be a bright future for Belgium. Could be the brightness of a nuclear explosion. Probably will be once the USA works out how communist we really are. We'll see. Well, we won't see because I'm getting out of here. Thanks for watching. Trying not to die as Belgium and trying not to crash my PC with so many icons on the screen. It appears we have reached the moment of ultimate victory. So thanks to everyone who no doubt put in the comments how to achieve this and stuff, but just so you know, I recorded this entire series before even the first part came out, because I knew people would be telling me what to do. So I decided instead to record it in full struggle mode for everybody's entertainment. I'm sure that was really annoying for everybody. Thanks for making it this far.
He's